All right. Thank you all for coming out to the Connect, Sacktown's finest. Thank you guys. I want to throw a quick shout out to our sponsor, Legacy Farms. Thank you guys for hosting us. This is the evolution of the Connect, guys. I'm super stoked. So round of applause for everybody. Thank you, Tyler. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Shayna. You guys are awesome. Thank you for hosting us. So here we are. You guys were at Big Sexy. We were hosted at Indoor Sun Hydro. Kevin, appreciate you, man. Thank you for opening that door up when we had another option. So round of applause for Kevin, too, please. Wouldn't be here without Kev. Kevin Vu, Indoor Sun Hydro. Actually, man, we wouldn't be here with, a lot of us wouldn't be here without your support. Awesome supplies, man. Indoor Sun, appreciate you. So Cultivation Chronicles. This is a big part about getting all these killers up here. We want to make sure that we can share as much game as possible. I think one of the biggest things that we can do is just level each other up. Community over competition. I think that's what we're doing here today. It's 2023 and we're still in business. There's a reason for that. It's perspective, all right? So perspective of also utilizing solutions, right? So I'd also like to throw out a quick shout out to our other sponsors, Copert, IPM, Mary DeSoto, where you at, Mary? Raise your hand, thank you. Hey, honestly, if anybody has any challenges with IPM, pest pressure, that's your gal. Please talk to Mary, thank you. MyFlora DNA. We're gonna have another panel on MyFlora DNA. They're testing, pathogen screening, genomic fingerprinting. A lot of cool solutions coming out with MyFlora. So want to say thank you guys for participating. Oscar and Chad, where you guys at? Raise your hand. Thank you, they're over there. Cool. Most importantly, our panelists. Mr. Matt Tricombe, Kevin Crouch, the tiered Canopy King. Appreciate you coming out, brother, thank you. We had Joe Cimino from Good Greens, LA's finest, and the one and only Bobby Bagz, Tim Crowell. Appreciate you, brother. I want to get a round of applause for these guys. They're taking the time out of their busy days to come here and educate, sharing value. So this is gonna be a pretty straightforward forum, right? So we're gonna go 30 minutes of discussion. So we'll try to do 10 minutes per topic. And if I can get a timekeeper, that would be awesome. So if someone could just keep me on time for 10 minutes within a topic, just let me know. Because I know these guys can talk for hours. We talk for hours. That's why we're up here talking together. So we can get these discussions recorded and shared out with the masses. So thank you for everybody watching and tuning in. Appreciate you guys. And then we're gonna open up for Q&A. This is the fun part. Q&A, guys, please think about some questions, and thank you for everybody that actually submitted their questions on the website, thecnct.com, short for the Connect. We want to hear what you want to learn about. This is it. Let's bring up more people. Let's get more panelists up here that want to share their value to the community. So if you have any questions, please feel free to submit that. And I also want to talk about, hold on. 1 second. The career board. So something that we've always talked about with what the Connect really is, it's a community, it's a networking source, yes, but are you trying to build a team of people that are passionate about what they're doing? Are you looking to get in the cannabis industry? Are you maybe looking for a different opportunity within the cannabis industry? Go to the website, submit what you're looking for, whether you're looking to get into the industry or actually get into something else, or if you're a business owner that you want to get new talent. You want to mingle with someone here that's actually putting out good value and you feel their vibes, we're going to connect it. We're going to connect those dots. So I'm really happy about this, so keep it up. Okay, let's jump right into it, guys. We're going to start off with the first topic of Undercanopy lighting. And this is a great topic because we're seeing a lot of tools, a lot of tactics, most importantly to grow great cannabis, increasing the quality. Start off with great genetics, great irrigation strategy, proper climate, and then we start going into other cool things, innovative things. And Tim, founder of Faven, Undercanopy Lighting, we're gonna get some great perspective on that. And let's go ahead and start it off. Tim, do you want to kick us off with what's the current topic with Undercanopy?
That was my first time being introduced as the co-founder, and I appreciate that. That was cool. Anyway, thanks for showing up, guys. I'm Tim. I go by Bobby in the industry. I know most of you guys in this room. I appreciate it. I know everybody here is really, really busy. So just like these guys, I don't even know where to start with this. Like,
So, okay, I'm going to start off with why Undercanopy?
So I feel like a grower's responsibility is not only just like basically a glorified janitor for the most part, but we're dealing with constraint. We're dealing with constraint. Thank you. We're dealing with a lot of constraints on the daily, right? And so there's a couple constraints that, you know, really, I guess, are kind of a thorn in the side for most growers. And a lot of times that comes down to like energy supply, square footage are the main two. I think of the guys in Michigan that are on plant count limits, right? You're only working with what you are given. And to me, under canopy lighting can really solve a lot of those issues without being detrimental to your crop. You know, a lot of people want to talk about how to push yield and how to create more revenue and stay in business, which is the name of the game, right? We have to stay in business and we have to create revenue. And sometimes we have to sacrifice on quality to get there when we push these yields with certain techniques and what have you. So to me, under canopy is not only getting cultivators, answering a lot of the cultivators' problems, but it's also giving them like early adopters are going to be they're going to benefit extremely well. This is a technology that is used in horticulture everywhere else, in agronomy everywhere else, and a lot of line crops, particularly tomatoes and peppers. And there's been a little bit of adoption in cannabis, but to me, this is probably the next wave, right? It's kind of a no-brainer. Light equals yield. But what do you do with that light? And so at Faven, what we've taken is we've been testing spectrums for over 3 years on HPS, LED, uplights, and which under canopy spectrums work best in those rooms. And so we really figured out that, you know, certain percentages paired with an HPS room really drive quality, drive terpenes, and of course you're adding light, so you're gonna add yield. Like the yield is going to be there. So let's focus on our quality, right? Same thing with LED rooms. We find that most LEDs are very, very weak in red lighting. So what are we doing? Well, we're putting a much redder spectrum underneath the plant. And so we're just spectrum balancing. Like it's very simple, you know, and if you've grown long enough, you used to throw HPS mixed with metal halide in your garage, and that was some of the terpiest, best weed. It just didn't yield as much, right? That's why everybody switched to HPS. So this is the way to bring in a new source of light. It doesn't take a lot of energy. It doesn't add a lot of heat. It doesn't add really that much to your already existing infrastructure, but the benefits completely outweigh the cost. So I guess that's my long-winded spiel on why.
Tim, I've got a couple questions. Are you just for practical side? Are you adjusting your plant height at all? And like, how far are the lights actually? Like, you know, I'm sure it's nugging up like the lowers, but like, how far up are you actually noticing the results?
So I'm not increasing plant size, but if you have a solid 4.5 foot plant, you're probably going to have the best output you would have with adding under canopy, right? Because we're looking at what, 2.5 to 3 feet of canopy max, 2.5 really HPS.
Yeah, I mean, I think it all depends on room layout. Yeah, totally, yeah, I mean, like 3.5 is probably 4, maybe pushing it, but yeah,
pushing it, right? Yeah. So, and you know, I just see it as I definitely would like to grow bigger plants because I think the more volume you have a plant, that's the more potential canopy you can optimize, right? And so we're working on double stack rows where obviously you're limited in height. Kevin can't have 5 foot plants, like he can't, right? Yeah, he doesn't even have a 5 foot. Dude, you don't have a 5 foot box. Oh my God. You are such a wizard. So I'm not growing bigger plants, but I'll tell you what we are doing. We're upgrading our substrate size, right? So in turn, you're going to get more root mass. You're going to get more vigorous growth, right? You're going to have a little bit more water availability, so you're going to get bigger plants. But what you're doing is really allowing there to be another demand on that plant and being able to supplement that with a larger substrate size, right? Because I feel like substrate sizing, which I'm probably skipping ahead now. Shit. Substrate sizing is extremely important because if you've got small 1 gallons, they're gonna drink a whole lot like they do on the regular without Undercanopy. You add Undercanopy and you're gonna just you're chugging water, right? So that's kind of a lesson there, and I feel like that comes down to different growers. But I know myself, I'm most likely in a hard 1 gallon pot with Undercanopy, I push that to 2, just to be safe. You can do it with ones, and in turn, you're gonna get a little bit of a bigger plant.
Do you know of anybody that's running it in a multi-tier system right now under lighting or no?
That is currently being researched by our teams. And what we're doing is we're playing around with what we're given, right? There's more constraints there. So we're trying to work a light to those constraints.
But you feel like the biggest adjustment you've had to make so far at this point is basically like media sizing.
Media sizing and irrigation, and I feed higher, right? I'm looking to push ECs a little higher because a lot of times you're giving the plant a whole different spectrum than it's used to, right? So it's demand. You're putting a bigger demand on the plant, so you have to meet that need with water and food. So that substrate, food, and water are definitely the top 3.
You know, I guess I keep just wanting to ask questions,
Go.
but what are you noticing? Some strains, some genetics like reacting much better, and I guess the other thing I'm thinking about off the top of my head is like some strains. The smalls. You get a higher percentage of smalls. It's much tougher to get those. It's like perps on the top versus greens on the bottom. I'm sure that some strains probably react differently. I don't know. What are kind of your experiences?
So the 2 examples I use are you can have a runts row, something candy, something that isn't notorious for like a great yield, right? And then you can have gelato, which everybody in this room has run a gelato of some kind. So gelato is unique in that it's very dense all the way down to the bottom, right? And it's very it's a different dry process for gelato, right? There's always like a ton of moisture locked into those buds. So the lower nugs on gelato are already kind of dense, and you're going to see a really nice increase with unders, running gelato. Now, if you look at runts right next to it on another row, runts lowers are larfy, they're airy, they're not really worth much. They definitely don't get purple, right? They're just they're very much a byproduct. They're not a premium flower. With unders, strains like that, we're seeing way bigger yield increases with ones that already were kind of lackluster on the understory, right? So if it already kind of had some density, I can think back to some OGs I used to grow that were just nugged up all the way to the bottom of the stem, the old school, more SFV OGs. But I don't know. But for the most part, you're going to see a good increase on every genetic. Some genetics are predisposed to do a little bit better. But good question. Yep.
Sorry to interrupt, guys, but last call for food is at 7:30. So if you guys want to get something to eat before it gets too late, just want to make sure you get fed tonight. Appreciate you. Let's do a 2-minute wrap up.
2-minute wrap up. Do we do questions now or later? All right, cool. I guess what I want to say about Undercanopy lighting is it looks like a because I was there 3 years ago. It totally looks like one of those cultivation gimmicks that comes and goes, takes your money. You're kind of left as a grower well, that wasn't fucking worth it. And I'm here to tell you that I was right there, and I was so pissed that I had to run this trial. And 9 weeks later, 10 weeks later, whenever we got those numbers back, the yield numbers back, and we saw the quality, right then I knew this had a huge place in cannabis, right? This is just another step in the progression of cultivation, in my opinion. In 2 to 3 years, call it 4 years to be nice, we're going to see the mass adoption of some kind of lighting. And I believe spectrum pairing with what we're trying to do at Faven is going to be exactly how you get your increase in yield and you drive your quality, right? Because quality is king right now. Adjusting plant count. Have you adjusted it? Yes. So planting densities are super, super keen, right? You're adding a light source underneath. You're going to add a little bit of heat, not much, but you're adding a little bit of heat. So what you're doing is you can reduce your plant count, especially if you're running 4 wide or 4 wide on a bench. You reduce your plant count, drop it to 3, and you prioritize airflow. And a lot of times I have people drop 25% of their plant count and increase into the 30s, 40s, and even 50s. And there are people in this room that have done that. So good question. You're prioritizing airflow, right? Another big factor. Darn, we already got into this. Who wants to go on substrate size?
Yeah, we've been messing around with plant count a lot in the last 6 to 9 months. We've done 36 a light, which was pretty insane. We did 25 for about 2 years. We're on to 20. Currently have a couple rows at 16 a light. What we found is really it comes down to genetics, veg time. For us, I grow in a box, so 48-inch roughly box. So that's the actual the height I have to grow the plant. That's not including light. So actually it's less than that because you want to be about a foot away. So I grow in about a 36-inch box. So with that, you have to change plant count in veg times to make that work in that box. So it's really depends on genetics. If you got a short variety that is a 3-week veg in a normal grow system, then you can make it 2 weeks at 36 a light. You'll probably achieve very similar results. If you have a stretcher, say like a standard OG variety that stretches like crazy, you're gonna probably want to do something, a shorter veg, 7-day veg, maybe 16 to 20, and try to get the light to penetrate a little better, keep it shorter, keep the apical dominance down, and hormone distribution a little lower. So.
And you guys are both Rockwool, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I grew in cocoa for, I don't know, I've been growing for 20 years, probably 18 of it was in cocoa. Nice. But Rockwool now, which I honestly love. Okay.
Yeah.
So I think one of the biggest questions is, what do I want to grow in, Rockwool versus cocoa, right? Maybe talk a little bit about the nuances or the simplicity around each of those.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I think it's more situational, of course. What's your inputs? What fertilizers are you using? Traditionally, I feel more comfortable using organics in cocoa versus Rockwool, so that's a big factor. As well as size. How big are the plants you're going to grow? If you're growing, something that's in my canopy, the pot size of a cocoa pot is much. That takes up a lot of space too. So you have pot size plays into that. If you only got 36 inches to grow, you're not going to want to grow in a 2-gallon pot. That takes up too much space. So a lot of factors in there. Rockwool is obviously inert. It's what you put in is what you get. What the plant gets, and which is also a benefit. Water content's a little easier for me to control. Cocoa dries back harder. So you're gonna have extremes there. Rockwool, depending on what you use, will sometimes be a little bit more balanced and a little more consistent dry back. Especially if you have a high plant count, you can count on that kind of density to be a little more uniform than you can with cocoa, in my experience.
Are you guys in 4x4s?
We stack blocks, so we grow in a 4x4 by 2.5 and stack it on a jumbo, which is a 6x6x4.
Wild.
And stacking is honestly to me is probably the best way to do it.
Yeah.
If because you could veg that plant up pretty well. You get good dry backs in a small block, and then you can stack it on something in flower, and then the bottom block wicks really well from that top block. Yeah. If you try to water a jumbo and you have 2 drippers in that jumbo, the outer 1/2 inch of that jumbo is going to be dry. No matter what your dripper emitter size is, it's just going to be dry because it can't wick to those edges. You stack a block on top of it, that block will wick down to that lower, and that edge of that lower block will be completely wet. And so you're maximizing your substrate by stacking blocks.
Killer. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. Right on. That actually really makes sense. Yeah, and I have a couple of facilities that like to do the 4x4x2 and put on cocoa, which I think we've talked before. Like, it's not my favorite thing to do,
Yeah.
but when it comes to vegging and keeping on schedule and knowing what you can trust, it's very much like it makes sense.
Yeah, if you're in a cultivation, a commercial spot, and you're trying to like fine tune the veg time, then you have to have that consistency of those small blocks. You're a home grower, you can kind of give and take a couple days, but if you're trying to pump out genetics and rooms, you can't.
Yeah, how many rooms you got?
10.
How many lights?
Ooh, I think veg lights and probably close to 1,400.
How many drippers?
Yeah. Well, that changes depending on what plant count we're messing with. But yeah, a lot
Yeah.
of drippers.
So I mean,
about over 5,000 in most of our rooms.
yeah, the facility layout definitely dictates. Huh?
Yeah, which is a whole nother topic, clogged emitters and how to deal with that, and maybe a future discussion.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. 2-minute wrap up. Just thinking. Yeah.
That's kind of asking about media substrate. I was talking with Mo from Luna, AJ's Flower down in LA, and it's kind of having this discussion now, especially with around Rockwell guys increasing media sizing. So depending on when we're cutting generative, that first, how early in stretch or even going past stretch, and then kind of messing around substrate sizing to kind of get, drybacks that aren't too extreme. But again, this all goes into plant density. And then as a result, so we're finding, I think some people are finding, as we're reducing plant count, increasing media sizing obviously is making a big difference. So it's kind of what I was wondering about, how now Undercanopy is kind of like a whole other piece to it.
And just to be clear, you don't have to, increase substrate size. It's just more like when you are at scale, having some kind of redundancy there, just in case there is some kind of water failure, which is going to happen every other week or so. It makes me sleep a little better at night, knowing something can fail and know everything is just fine in that room. Whereas Rockwell guys, you guys ride that line to me of like, if things don't fire at 2 a.m., things can get a little tricky in there, and that's what, just me being a cocoa primary, I've done some Rockwell, and most of the time I just hit up Kevin for tips for it. But and double stack. But anyway, yeah, I think that's good. Substrate size really depends on like the entire facility layout, how big you are, how much room you have, veg constraints, which is a lot of people, the two things people undersize are veg and dry space. So, whatever you're given. Good? All right. Tiered canopy genetics. So I'm going to start off just because Kevin is, we just talked actually for like 20 minutes about the different genetics he has going on in there. I'm really lucky to work with a grow around the corner from here that just built their first double stacks. And so it was my first experience with double stacks. And I can't tell you how important it is to genetic select for double stack tiering. And it seems obvious, yes, but it even goes farther than like how big the plants get. Like, you obviously aren't throwing GMO on a double stack. Like, you probably shouldn't do that. It really, and Kevin hit on it earlier, it's how much it can handle a little extra heat load being on the bottom story, right? It's does it need to be perfectly comfortable at all times? Because a lot of double stacks are really, really tough, especially on the bottom. And so I'm lucky enough to have like it be into my fourth run now. And if you would have talked to me this time last year, I would have told you double stacks were a total waste of time and I couldn't stand them. And now I'm like, okay. Like, I can kind of see the future in it. And it pains me to say, but I get it. I really do get it. After two not failed first runs, but two really rough first runs, like ones that like kept you up at night first runs. The third run ended up bringing it home. Quality all sold within like 3 days. Yields were good. It was, exactly what the market is looking for. And, we're on to our fourth run. So I'll let you lead this one on the genetic selection on there, but man, it's so uber important. Like, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, congrats on the run though. That's
I got to do it again to really prove it, though.
Yeah. Hopefully with the
Now
same genetics.
Now the real stress. Nope. They threw in 6 new ones. It's all good.
Yeah, it's a double stacked in genetics. Genetics are key, and most of it has to do with the stretch. Stretch in the first 2 to 3 weeks of flower. That's really, it plays an important. If you have a 36, 48 inch box and you got a 3x stretcher, you have to know that going in. Otherwise, you will grow through the lights, or you're gonna have to find a way to keep it down, trellis, weaving, super cropping, whatever you can do to keep that terminal bud below the lights. And we've had plenty of strains that go through the lights, but we use right now we're messing around with three layers of trellis because we have a couple of varieties I really like to grow. And so I have a couple weave masters that it's like weaving tomato plants in a trellis, and that's they control the canopy that way to be able to get to grow something that's like a 3x stretch or 4x stretch in a 36 inch box. And so genetics, knowing your genetics or the lineage, we do a lot of breeding. So you kind of and I have a lot of GMO actually crosses. Yes. A lot of ours have GMO because I love the stretch. I mean, production wise, you can't beat something that is a 3x stretch, and because then you can reduce your veg time.
Right.
And so you reduce your veg time, you elevate up, your overall harvest per year. So, you're trying to do that.
So Kev, to that point, you just need to understand at what point you need to flip those to flower.
Flip them
right?
to flower, or figure out a way to keep the stretch down, whatever you're trying to do, control that toxin hormone, and get it to
talk about some of those tactics. How do you keep the stretch down if you were dealing with the 3x stretch?
I mean, everybody knows about super cropping. That's probably we don't top at all unless we have a reason, like say we're holding over plants and they're already a foot taller, and I just got to reduce their vertical height. That's the only time we top. Otherwise, we clip. Really, we use the trellis to control the hormone distribution of the plant, keep it down. That's the number one way we do it. And so we always have 2 trellises every row, no matter what. And just depends on what height we trellis, what genetic it is, and then doing everything in house. We kind of have an idea sometimes because we breed a lot of parents, so we'll have an idea what we're dealing with, and we have a lot of success doing that versus sometimes buying genetics like that we're a shot in the dark. How does this go? And I could have an idea based on somebody else, but then when it comes down to growing it, it's a challenge.
Yeah, something that that kind of clicked for me on this third run was as soon as I saw, and I'm one gal hard pot clone right into it, like little 2x2 into it. As soon as we noticed that moment in veg where you come in, you leave for the night, you come in the next day and you're like, oh my God, they jumped.
Yeah.
That day, flip. As soon as that plant velocity gets there, that you're not slowing that down anytime soon. And that is the correct time to flip. And I kind of I was telling somebody early today, I kind of liken it back to my greenhouse days, where if I came in my greenhouse and I thought I was a week away from flip, I would flip that day because I knew myself, and I always over veg, and I always would be climbing through a jungle, and I never got any more weight for all that mass.
Yeah.
It was just more labor and never any more weight. So as soon as that plant velocity took off on this third one, we were like, okay, just flip it. Who cares if it's short? Who cares? And it ended up being absolutely perfect. And I see another thing is you were talking about distance from light. And I see people get so close, and of course this is Instagram, so who knows what the rest of the room looks like. But I see people get so close with these tops, and I'm like, anytime I get that close, it's terrible.
It's bad.
It's terrible. And so I the first couple times I was like, no, it's cool. We can get them close. It's all, I see it all the time. And so that was just me not understanding that whole process. But you really need to be foot underneath it and super crop,
optimal.
right? And something like not topping too, right? Because topping is going to lead to more leaf, more vegetation, right?
Not
more
only that,
labor.
it slows it down too.
Yeah.
You're cutting off that terminal shoot. It's got to heal, and then rebuild.
And my whole thing with topping, and I topped forever until a couple years ago, was some plants react differently to topping, and same genetic, but some may bounce back in a day. It may take 4 days for the one next to it to do it, and now you're messing with uneven canopy.
GDP or something like that. Forget it. You go like 5 days out after you top something like that.
Oh yeah.
Maybe 7 before you start seeing crazy growth.
Exactly. So it's a really good point, and like it all, again, it's like what you're given in your grow room, like the doubles, like how are triples for you guys who are doing all that. I look forward to seeing it, not working it. It really like every little nuance matters when it comes to like really growing with the heart of a constraint.
Yeah, and probably the biggest key that I've seen genetics play as well is like something like leaf surface temp, which you don't really ever think about in an HPS room because the lights are 4 feet away. But when you're in a double stack and you're 9 inches away, you think LEDs don't produce heat, but when you're 9 inches away from an LED, they produce a good
160 of them.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep. Yeah. And so you're producing that heat. And so especially on a lower tier where you may not have the air circulation, how's that heat going to dissipate? So it just roasts those terminal shoots and the leaves and it reduces production. And so trying to keep that 9 is about the low, as low as I like to go. 12 preferred, and then you can keep that leaf surface temp down to a manageable level, throughout the whole canopy.
Leaf surface temp was one of the big keys that really got unlocked on that third successful run. Was like, okay, got it.
FLIR cameras are key.
You are actually the one that put me onto those, so I appreciate it, Kevin.
Yeah, you can use like an automotive laser, one of those heat temp guns, which is cool, but you really get to see a better signature with like a FLIR because you can just see the whole light. You can just walk by and just see hot spots. And
so that was really interesting. Turning on the double stack for the first time, putting plants in it, seeing the load, and then seeing where the hot spots were, and then going about it and placing fans right where you need it. Most definitely. Yeah. And then like some of it, like if you designed it wrong, you were kind of stuck with it. But let's hope you're not there.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes that's hard to fix in a double stack too.
Oh,
you can't just place fans on the wall. There's especially with rolling racks, you're pretty stuck.
You're a wizard.
Thank you.
All right, a couple layups. What are some great genetics to be running in double stack or tiered stack?
Apparently GMO.
Apparently GMO, the 3X stretcher. Yeah.
Well, I would say not straight GMO. I have not, but GMO crosses for sure. Yeah.
So you're not afraid of 3X stretchers. You just
no. I would just 7-day veg, and change the plant count. It's probably what I would do, and but it really genetics that. For double stack, obviously, I think you have the easiest time if it's a slower, less stretcher and flower, slower vegger. But commercially, that you're probably going to kill yourself trying to grow those. So
How long do you typically veg for?
usually 14 days is probably about average. But there's some varieties like marshmallow we grew that was like a 7-dayer. Grape gas would be like a 7, 9. Yeah, grape gas.
Most of your mother stocks in house?
Yes, all.
So like how tall are you cutting your clones? Is it like you guys cut clones a certain way or something?
No. I mean standard clone cutting practice. Yep, exactly. Yeah, I think we do about 18, almost cultivated size. I think 18,000 a month to fill all those rooms. So right around there, probably. Yeah, half of my team's here right now. Yeah, right. Sure. There's still a couple people there right now, actually.
awesome. So we're coming up on the time to wrap up. We hit time on the panel, but we're going to open it up a Q&A and start engaging. So if you guys want to start thinking about some questions, so Kev, other than like a quick stretch plant, obviously candies right now. Talk about some candies that you guys are looking at or that are working well.
Yeah, I love sweet strains. That's probably, I'm not a big gas guy. I've always been kind of the sweet candy and not candy gas, like fruity, just So we have some really nice ones right now. We have a variety that dates back to my first breeding. Is probably what I'm most excited about. It's from 2006. I don't even want to get into the lineage. It's like eight crosses over that time frame, and it smells like juicy fruit gum, which is a little bit, there's a lot of sweet. You can put like, sweet this, sweet cherries, whatever, and it's definitely unique for cannabis. And it's a sativa type growth, which sometimes fingers out a little bit on double stacks with the heat signature, that we deal with. So you get sometimes some crazy looking buds that are not necessarily look like they would be great commercially, but they in the end turn out usually pretty good. But yeah, we have a lot of sweet flavors coming out right now. Yeah, everything. Yeah. Yeah, you should try it for sure. It's amazing.
Okay, time for some Q&A. Any questions to start off with? All right. First off, let's give it a round of applause for these three panelists real quick. Dropping game. Name and what farm you're from.
Bobby, when you do the under light, does it change the humidity at all? Or do you have to change your draft or in the canopy?
So yeah, you're going to see increased transpiration, which is going to put an increased humidity load, and that's something you can really counteract with decreasing plant count, right? So less plant mass, you can just tell it's going to, we're talking about a little more transpiration because of the added light, less because you're dropping plant count. So, I've experimented pretty low plant counts with, unders. At the very least, dropping to 3 plants wide on a 5x or a 4x table is very, very standard. I don't see, and it also saves you money because if you're, that's only 2 rows of underlighting, right? So I think I don't see. Let me back up. I see there's kind of a constraint with how much you can put underneath the plants, right? If you're throwing 3 rows of Undercanopy on a 5x wide table, it's good, it works. You probably could have done the same with less plants and 2 rows instead of 3 rows of lighting. So you are going to see that increased humidity, but again, you can really counteract it with dropping plant count. And honestly, dropping plant count is something that helps the entire grow. Like that's less moms, that's less clones, that's less labor, that's less de-leaf, right? It really is a huge snowball that can get going in the right direction. Good question.
Right over here. Name and where you're from.
My name's Gail. I'm with Optic Foliar. My question for you, gentlemen from Faven, is you find any, while running these under canopy lights, any kind of micro deficiencies at all because of the given ratio and common hydroponic nutrients?
So it's not every single situation. It really depends on which nutrients you're running. But I do like to increase EC overall, right? I just believe that since you're adding more likely a different spectrum and also more intense lighting and directly to the plant, you're very much lighting the entirety of the plant. So it's going to need more food to really meet that demand. So and these are pretty high numbers, but I have guys in, 8-10 light rooms in their, in their garage, what have you, running unders and LEDs up top that are putting in 4.5, and it's getting them to where they need to be. Even like 4.0 and 3.8, they see some deficiencies. It's just that demand. You don't need to be that high, but there are certain situations where you're in a small constraint, right? You're feeding a little bit higher. I still hang around. I'm very much a proponent of lower ECs. I think there's a direct relation to quality, an absolute direct relation to quality. But when you're adding that demand on the plant, that plant is using that nutrient, so that quality is still brought through in the end product. So, but good question. Adding something new to the room, something else is going to change. 4 or 5 things are going to change, to be honest with you.
That's a hot take. Low
Yeah.
EC directly correlated to quality.
Sorry. Kind
Love
of
it.
hurting feelings.
Good question.
Matthew from Roseville. This is from Faven. What's your name again?
I'm Tim.
Tim. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
So you said when you started doing the double tiered structure, especially in the beginning, you were not a fan of it. What were some of those challenges that you were going through with those first couple of runs that almost made you run in the other direction? If you can
No.
illustrate that.
It's more of I was given the opportunity, and in my head I was like, well, if you're going to be a professional in the cannabis space, you should learn double tier. It was more like a necessity out of like needing to learn that skill. So no matter what, we were going to figure it out. And honestly, like I bounced so many like texts off Kevin the first couple runs, and just finally had to get back to just like watching the plant every single day, and that's what really like brought it through, along with like, hey Kevin, how many plants are you running a light? How was your distance from the light? The challenge is just overall, like it sucks to work in a double tier room. Like I don't like enjoy that. Like I just don't. I like my HPS, and I like big, wide, non-moving stationary tables. And obviously we can't grow that way anymore, but that's what I like. And so it really just comes back from like where I started and where my roots are. And it's just, it's good to learn a new skill, especially in cannabis, because if you're not always learning, right, you're probably getting passed up. So that was one of those things. But I do believe that after this successful run, like I get it now, and I see that it has a huge runway in the future. I can't say all my rooms are going double tier tomorrow, but I can. When people tell me they're building out double tier, I'm less likely to cringe, because I'm like, okay, it can work. It can work. And it takes a lot. I don't know if I could do 10 rooms of it, I'll be honest, but I can definitely handle 1 or 2. So good question though. It's not an easy decision. I don't know anything about 3s. Mango's in the back of the room though. You could talk to him. But yeah, I don't know about 3.
Good question. Thank you. Alex, you want to touch on 3s real quick? I don't want to put you on the spot here, but
Mango.
What's up, people?
Hey, we're all rooting for you, Mango.
Thank you, Bob. Appreciate it. My clone room is 5 tiers. My clone room is 5 tiers, and I only really need the first 3 tiers, but it's nice to have the other 2 tiers on top in case you want to hold some genetics, or let some teens grow up a little bit. Because of the effectiveness of the space in the tier system, we actually are adding a nursery license. I'm throwing away way too many clones that are good at the end of every harvest. Let's say we harvest about every 17 days, so I just decided to add the nursery license. We also veg on a quad tier. The 4th tier is for an emergency. We don't ever use it. Yes, every time you go higher, it slows down the production. But if you have the height, it's better to use it. It's kind of like insurance. Better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it. If you have the space, just throw it up there in case that something backs up. There's a pipe burst or whatever happened. Some kind of, you get a fire or whatever it is. You don't want to throw away all the genetics that you have. You want to be able to, put them somewhere, and that's where you're going to put them. So that's what we do. The quintuple tiers and the quad tiers.
So if you don't mind me asking, how tall is your veg room height-wise, and how tall are your flower rooms height-wise?
They're all 15, 10, 16 foot.
And then do you have heat issues from, like let's say 5 foot versus 14 foot? And then do you have issues with kind of air getting trapped at certain tiers or anything?
Not sure if you see my page, but I have 0 microclimates, and that's just because of the way that I built the rooms. My mom room has 16 4-in-1 sensors from TrowMaster, and they're within 3 points, whether it's humidity or temperature. And that's hard to do because in the mom room, I have double tier for moms to the left, let's say, and then to the right, I have 5 racks that are 4 tiers. And when you hydrate, when you soak 3,000, 3,500 clones and you put them on those 3 tiers of the quad tiers, there is a ton of humidity in that space. But every tier has vertical air. That room happens to be Innovative Growers Equipment, and I have different racking companies in just about every room, but they all have some kind of vertical air system that blow air, which, by the way, we are in the process of releasing a new fan line from TrollMaster. I beta tested about 4 sets of fans. When I built this facility, I seen a lack of, I seen a void in the space. Most fans are 120 volt. And sorry that I'm going off the subject a little bit, 120 volt. And there is no commercial facility that should run a fan at 120 volts. So we coming up with a fan line that's going to have inline fans, high velocity fans like the Patterson-like fans, and oscillating fans that are smart sensing. They'll read 120, 240, 277. And they're also going to be daisy chainable. You can operate them from the HydroX Pro, and you can also group them. So for example, in a double, triple tier space, when you go in there and you're used to double dragon like we have the sprayer, and you're going to spray a room, you push spray mode. So what that does is that dims your lights to 1%, so you can spray in the light. 1% you think is not much, but it's actually bright enough to spray, and it's actually pretty bright. So then what you do is you shut off all your vertical fans, so there's no spray that's drifting anywhere and getting on the lights or whatever. That shuts off those fans. The undercarriage fans, because I also put fans underneath all the carriages. Every carriage has multiple fans. So instead of having a vortex like a hurricane, I have an up and down vortex. Hot air rises, cold air stays underneath the carriages. I do a different up and down vortex. And then the high velocity fans up top, you put them like at 15%, 20%, 25%, just so there's some air circulation. These guys that are spraying IPM, they're in a Tyvek suit or something like that with a mask. It's not a fun job, and they come out of there with their shirts sweating. So back to the question that you had is, I have zero issues with hot areas or humidity areas, just because of the ways that I built the rooms. More than welcome to come check it out.
Appreciate that.
A lot of game there from Mango. Hell yeah.
Thanks, Alex. Putting you on the spot.
What other questions? Here we go.
DSG.
Name and where you're from.
Justin from Sacramento. So question on the lights. I was curious about spectrum. Did you play with the spectrum at all? And is there any far red in the Undercanopy lights?
No far red just yet, but yeah, I've been testing spectrum since my days at Connected. So it's been about 3 years of testing different spectrums under LED top lights, HPS top lights, which one works better, which one is good, which one's great. No far red just yet, but I mean, everything's on the table, and there's going to be many, many iterations of these lights. This is just, we felt like there was a huge void in the space, and either you got to get them from GE, who doesn't really know what's going on. You got to hang intercanopies within your canopy, which if you think that works on scale, you are absolutely ludicrous. And just people kind of putting out a veg light that thought it could work, and it does. Like, you put a light under a plant, it's going to work, but let's do that the right way. So yeah, good question.
What are the questions? Up front.
Quick question. Has anybody had any experience running aeroponics in a room? No.
No experience, but that is very tough.
I got you. So actually, at Cultivate, we run a high pressure aeroponic system by Current Culture, and that's where we initiate plant material that's coming in from TC. So that is a very great way to acclimatize tissue culture plantlets. And it's actually giving us a really strong, quick veg, allowing it to transfer into whatever medium is going to be going in for the actual mother growth. Preparing for mother stock, yes. Did you have a specific question about aeroponics in general? It's a high risk, high reward type of a setup. I mean, high pressure aeroponics, I mean, you really got to be on your ECs and making sure that your water balance in that environment's there. So, what's that, Kev? Plant pathogens is big time, exactly. What other questions? Whatever.
How's it going? Logan from Friendo Flower. As far as flowering times, do you guys cap it at a certain day? I know you run a lot of GMO strains, and you have 10 flowering rooms. Do you have any one that you take longer than the others?
We have 10 rows in a room and 130 lights in a room. So with that, we have to mix a lot of strains. So we kind of go with like a standard about 63 days is what we go. Some like right now we have a couple of varieties that are done in day 49 and some that are 56, some are 62. So, but 63 is pretty much the cap. And sometimes, you know, a room will come down a little earlier if you know, somehow all the strains were 60 days, but that's about standard.
So do you have like a mixed room and you just harvest as they become ready?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Pretty much. Yep.
Thank you.
That's why it's very important to know your lineage. You can't be planting longer flower finishing time cultivars in the same bench or the same room as an earlier finishing cultivar. Very important. Know your genetics, know your nursery. Make sure your selections are set for your operation. What other questions? Any questions up on the panel? Do you guys have other thoughts?
I guess I got a question for Kevin. So, you know, I know you've been doing a lot of breeding. You've been doing some Skittles at all? Yes, yeah. So have you noticed like shorter flowering time for selecting like Skittles crosses?
Yeah. I would say not crazy short, but yeah, probably more like a 56 day. Yeah. You know, we did a lot of pairings with Gushmints, which was a 70 day. So, you know, that's, you know, and pulling in at 63 is still doable, still tests good. Terps are great, but yeah, exactly. GMO. Our selection of GMO was basically a GMO sherb. So GMO crasher. So it was the parent that I reversed for that was done in 62 days. And it had 3% terps, tested at like 34, 35. So it checked all the boxes. Terps are actually really light, even though it tested high in the terp analysis. A lot of osmine in it. And so that helped bring down flowering times on a lot of our genetics, and yield was great on it. However, it did pass sometimes like the silent terp nose. So the Thiz face somebody was talking about is a GMO crasher reversal. It was face mints times GMO. And it was a beast. That's probably, I think, is our record yield in the room too. It was like 3.4 pounds. It's what we pulled a light on multiple rows of it, not just like one light, which is, yeah, it grew. It was a 3X strain, by the way, too. Yeah. It was a gnarly, it grew like, I love growing golf balls. Everybody in the facility, that's my optimal growth is golf balls. If you can grow golf balls, you're killing it because you don't have to break down the nugs to get in the jar. It's just like the perfect size nug. So it grew giant golf balls and all the way down, and internodal space was great. So those kind of selections are like key. And the GMO was a big reason because that did not come from the face mints. Face mints was like a 1.5X stretch. So it came 100% from the grandparent, the GMO in it.
One sec.
Would that be more like a Kim D pheno of the GMO?
No. Chem D grow. My experience with the Chem D I've grown grows like towers. So thinking about it would almost be like an overgrown cookies. Like, you know, cookies grows like not golf balls, more like peanuts, you know, and peas. Yeah. So but that structure and the nodal spacing of like a cookies, but instead literally golf balls. It's really rare. Out of hundreds and hundreds of strains we've grown, that ones that actually grow true golf balls is probably more rare than colas and everything. But that's optimal. I select for golf balls or ping pongs, I guess, too, maybe.
What are the questions? Guys, any final thoughts?
What's the biggest flood you've ever caused?
I couldn't tell you the biggest flood, but 3 years ago, I did come in on Christmas Day to do the check-in, and a liter pump was just spewing straight up into the fucking air. I don't know how many thousands of gallons, but it was Christmas morning, and I was like, okay. This is before I had a kid, so it was totally fine. But yeah, anyway, that was probably not my biggest, but it was the most impactful to that day. But yeah. Well, you got a recent flood that's haunting you?
My PTSD stems. I dumped like 1,000 gallons, and it was like kind of a similar situation like this. What would happen was it leaked into like the unit next door, so it caused this whole issue with the neighbor. So that wasn't fun, but I know.
Yeah, I've been fortunate when we built the facility. I was like, man, we need trench drains. Trench drains are a must. And because of that, there really hasn't been any floods in the facility. But I think probably if you've ever grown in houses, you've come home at some point to a flooded garage, or I should say water coming out the garage door. I've had that happen a couple times.
Great question, Joe. Way to cap it off. Guys, that's it. We're going to wrap it up. Want to say thank you to these panelists. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to drop game. Let's hear a round of applause for these guys. So again, big shout out to Legacy Farms. Thank you so much for hosting the Connect here. This is going to be consistent, guys. We're going to find some consistency in the schedule. The third Tuesday of each month, you'll be here at the Connect. We're really, really happy to have this home. And be on the lookout. We're going to be starting to talk about an Extractors Connect coming up very shortly here. We posted the question the other day on Instagram. We heard you. Extraction-focused discussions are coming. And there's so much room for collaboration in this space, guys. I'm really excited to start talking about this because there's so much that cultivation needs to be in synchronicity with their extraction team. So much value is going to come from this talk. So we're going to be starting to put that out more than likely it's going to be the second, it'll be the same week, the third Tuesday of each month, but we're going to do it on the Thursday. So we're going to go Tuesday, cultivation specific, then we're going to go Thursday, extraction specific. So I know certain people are coming in from all over the country. Got some visitors from Canada. So thank you guys. Appreciate you coming in. So we want to make sure that we're giving as much value, as much time for you guys to plan and prepare. I'm grateful that I have a little bit more time now to start preparing these meetings a little bit more structured. And again, bringing in some wonderful sponsors. Really appreciate you guys helping us out to really keep this notion going. This is a community event. So I'm very grateful that you guys all took time out of your day to come here, network, have some good food, good drinks, some good herb. This is what we're about. Really appreciate you guys. Thank you so much. Thanks for coming out.
One more thing. Sergio gave all the shout outs, but we have to give this guy a shout out because, he's bringing this back and I know we all love it and it's great for the community. And that's this guy right here kind of continuing and really promoting it.
Thank you guys. Have fun. We'll talk to you next month.